Chapter 19. Anne, the last chapter was a blast among all of you. I see. Well, I did sort of expect that people would be happy about the jumbo-sized chapter. The bigger the chapter, more the enjoyment, right? At least, that's the way for me. Anyways, do know that I still want to know the answer of the question I asked in the PPS of the last one. Please do answer. Let's move on now. As a forewarning, I didn't feel as good about this chapter as I did with the previous ones. I may not have done it the justice it deserves. Enjoy, if you can. P.S. This chapter contains a bit of politics. I'm really not good at writing that, so please just bear with me. The week after the invasion was as Naruto expected. Everyone became busy in cleanup duty. The damage to Konoha was considerable, so all the genin teams were under their sensei's supervision and working alongside civilians to rebuild and restore certain areas that were hit harder than the most. One thing that Naruto noticed was that the rookies and their senseis mostly stayed together in a close radius, most probably the sensei's way of giving them all some sort of comfort. Now that Naruto stood at the gates of Konoha, he reflected on the past week and all that happened as he about to embark on his first S-rank mission. Each day, something new and strange happened. Either way, boredom was avoided and excitement was maintained. Flashback. Tuesday. All the genin teams along with their senseis were standing in the Hokage's office, waiting for their orders. Naruto found it strange that Kakashi had himself come to wake him up at 6 o'clock in the morning. He had told him to get ready and meet him at the entrance to the Hokage Tower in 15 minutes. He had disappeared after that, since it was morning, and Naruto had figured that everyone would be resting considering what had happened yesterday. It took a few seconds for him to register Kakashi's message, and he found several disturbances. First, he had never, ever seen Kakashi this early in the morning. The man had a knack for being late to almost everything. He would always tell them to report at the training grounds around 5 or 6 in the morning, but he would keep them waiting for a grand total of 3 hours, every time. Second, Kakashi never told them to hurry anything up. In fact, the longer they took to complete a mission, the better, mostly because he wanted to read his porn, but it also might be because of the man's lazy attitude in general. Naruto had almost believed that the man was someone who was impersonating Kakashi, until Kurama pointed out that it was impossible for a shinobi to impersonate the chakra signature of another shinobi. Naruto had reluctantly conceded to the point and had gotten dressed as usual. He proceeded to the destination via rooftops, noting grimly the amount of destruction the invading armies had caused, even though Konoha had won in the end. As the tower came into view, he was surprised to note that all the rookie teams were standing there as well, along with their senseis. As he landed before them, all the attention was turned to him. Naruto had shifted self-consciously at how all of them were looking at him, as if he was someone else entirely. Deciding to save himself the awkwardness, he greeted them. "Yo, what's up?" That was all that came out of his mouth. He really didn't have much to say, honestly. The first one to react was Shikamaru. "What a drag, he is way too chirpy for the morning," he muttered. Slumped as usual. Naruto shrugged the comment aside and looked for any sign of his teammates. There was none. Approaching Asuma, he asked, "Asuma-sensei, have you seen Kakashi-sensei around? He came over to wake me up, which is kind of strange for him." Asuma took a drag of his cigarette and blew it out, saying, "I did see Kakashi a while ago. Don't worry, Naruto, we are assembled due to the Hokage's orders. He has to show up. Hokage personally threatened him with his book collection if he did not." Naruto whistled in appreciation. Not every day the copy ninja with his porn book collection. He went to stand beside Choji, who was looking more cheerful than his friend. Leaning against the wall, he waited for his team. Choji pushed the bag of potato chips towards Naruto. "Yo Naruto, want some?" Naruto smiled. "Don't mind if I do." His friend had an unusually big heart. To Naruto's irritation, it took Kakashi 15 more minutes to arrive, and he wasn't the only one who was looking annoyed. The man had the nerve to walk towards them without a care in the world. Kurenai flashed a look of annoyance to him. "Really, Kakashi?" Keeping the Hokage waiting. Again, Kakashi did not look ruffled in the slightest. "Relax, Kurenai, we still have a full 2 minutes to report to him." Naruto looked over to his teammates. Sakura looked as if she had literally been dragged out of bed. while Sasuke looked a bit more composed. The small twitches of his eyebrow gave away his irritation, though. He looked at Naruto with an expression he couldn't fully describe, but a sense of foreboding filled his being. He did not like that. The rookie teams then entered the Hokage Tower together, scaling the stairs in awkward silence. They really just made it in time for the meeting. Gigi was sitting in his chair, looking not one bit sleepy and cranky. In fact, he looked just like when he did on regular duty days. He was, as usual, working on some paperwork. All the genin filed into one line, with their senses standing behind them, waiting for the aged leader to speak. Hiruzen looked over to them from beneath his hat with serious eyes. He seemed to be evaluating them as his eyes passed from each genin to another. Everyone, except Sasuke, shifted uncomfortably at his stare. When his eyes landed on Naruto, Naruto just gave him a look of curiosity, silently asking the question, "What's going on?" Team 7, Team 8, Team 9 and Team 10, he addressed in his old but powerful voice. "I have called you here to address the issue at hand. As you have already seen on the way to here, Konoha has suffered many damages in various parts of the village. Therefore, we need all the shinobi available, here and out in the field, to protect and rebuild Konoha in its delicate position. Therefore, from today on, you won't be doing any missions at all. All of you will be joining the construction duty, resuming missions only when I see it fit. I have already told your senses on what to do." Any questions? Everyone shook their heads, so the Hokage dismissed them. As they exited the towers to go to their workplaces, the genin began chattering among themselves. Now that the oppressive aura of the Hokage had been lifted, it came no surprise to Naruto that Ino was the first one to start talking. "Why is Hokage Sami giving us construction work? We don't know the first thing about it." She put her arms up. Naruto sighed and answered, "If only to shut her up. That's why we have D-rank missions, Ino. Also, we won't be working by ourselves. Our senses will be giving us orders in a way that we can follow without getting confused. Lastly, the village needs to be rebuilt. As you can clearly see." Ino frowned and was about to say something when Shikamaru spoke with a raised eyebrow. "Oi, Naruto, you were fighting Gaara in the forest yesterday, right?" And just like that, all of the attention was shifted onto their talk. Ino asked in confusion, "Did you hit your head or something, Shikamaru?" Naruto was fighting Gaara in the stadium, not in the forest. Naruto spoke on behalf of Shikamaru. "You may not believe it because you were caught in the genjutsu, Ino, but Gaara was a part of the invasion force. For some reason, he was about to retreat with his siblings but Sasuke managed to catch up to him. I was fighting somewhere else." He deliberately avoided mentioning that he was the one who fought and defeated Gaara because frankly, he did not want to be subjected to her endless questioning. Her reputation as the gossip queen of Konoha made him wary of her. Plus, by mentioning that Sasuke was the one who fought Gaara, she would likely turn her attention onto him. As he predicted, Ino turned to a scowling Sasuke with stars in her eyes. "So you really did defeat Gaara, Sasuke-kun?" "I didn't have a single doubt." Naruto refrained from smirking as Ino began to pester the details out of Sasuke. Sakura jumped into the conversation as well, not liking how close Ino was being to her. "Sasuke-kun, back off, Ino pig. Stop laying on to Sasuke-kun. And besides, what do you mean that Sasuke-kun defeated Gaara?" Now this question attracted everyone's attention. The Jonin senses were watching carefully, ready to intervene in case dangerous information were to be leaked out. They all knew who really defeated Gaara, as they were informed by the Hokage last night when he had called them to discuss what to do today. All the Jonin had questions as to how the Jinchuriki of the sand was stopped. Jinchuriki were, after all, beings that contained immense power, and there were very few who could claim the feat of defeating one that was fully in sync with his or her Baiju. The Hokage had given them a full report of what had told him when he had summoned the boy into his office yesterday at a separate time than the Jonin. After the report, heavy shock had settled upon all of the Jonin. To think that Uzumaki Naruto defeated the one-tailed Jinchuriki without resorting to his own tailed beast's power was staggering. And not only that, but he had been instrumental in stopping the Snake Sannin, who was here to kill the Hokage. The quality of the information was staggering. Shocked mutters and even a few protests and denials had broken out, saying that it would be impossible to achieve two feats such as those on the same day. However, everyone had shut up when the Hokage's killing intent rose up. Hiruzen had thundered that they dare question the word of their Kage. Safe to say, everyone had accepted the information with varying amounts of shock. The boy had done feats that would be impossible for almost every Jonin there was. The Hokage had then given them orders on what was to be done the next day and warned them that the information was to be strictly kept amongst themselves. Not even a whisper was to be let out, or they would be severely punished. Back to the conversation. Sakura was frowning at Ino's statement. She knew her teammates, and while she still had a huge crush on Sasuke, she did not allow that to cloud her judgment. She had seen Gaara fight, and she had seen Naruto fight. She had also seen a bit of how Sasuke fought Gaara before she was knocked unconscious by the giant claw of sand. His speed seemed to have increased very much, and he had a deadly new jutsu. His hands seemed to cackle in lightning, but she could say very confidently that Sasuke could not defeat Gaara or Naruto. When she had woken up, Sasuke had told her that he had managed to escape with her only when Naruto had arrived. So the logical conclusion should be that Naruto defeated Gaara. Ino glared at Sakura. I mean exactly what I said, forehead. Do you mean to imply the Sasuke-kun did not defeat Gaara? Just as Sakura was about to reply in affirmative, Kakashi butted in, much to Naruto's relief. Alright, we're here. I'm assigning you your places now so that we don't waste time when the workers get here. We'll start by ourselves until then, so Sakura, you will help over a broken bar. And like that, the conversation was avoided for the day. All the teams had dispersed to different places in the square, and as the day progressed, the entire discussion had been forgotten. Wednesday, the day before, was spent quite fruitfully with all the work they had done. Today, they were to continue where they had left off. As Naruto lifted another of the wooden planks, he was approached by Sasuke, who had his hands in his pockets, trying to look as cool as he could while being covered in dirt and grime. What's up, Sasuke? Sasuke frowned at him and simply said, we need to talk. Naruto looked confused for a moment, but when Sasuke raised an eyebrow, he immediately understood. Sasuke wanted to talk to him about why he let Gaara go. Nodding, he placed the plank in its place and turned to him. You want to have that talk now? Sasuke nodded. He had been thinking on that question for a while now. He knew that Naruto loved his village, but for him to show such sympathy to his enemy was rare, to the point that Sasuke had never seen before. Naruto turned and walked to where Kakashi was doing his own work. Seeing his student approach him, Kakashi paused, raising an eyebrow in silent question. Naruto said, me and Sasuke are taking a break. There's something we need to talk about. Kakashi shook his head. You can't just leave in the middle of work like this, Naruto. The village needs to be rebuilt as soon as possible. So it's for the best if you and Sasuke save your talk aside for later. Naruto just gave him a deadpan and created two shadow clones. Pointing towards them, he said, these two will substitute for us. I hope that's not a problem now. Please excuse us. He didn't give Kakashi any time to reply, nor did he give Sasuke any time to brace himself. He just grabbed Sasuke and flashed away, leaving Kakashi blinking stupidly at their abrupt departure. The two clones took Naruto in Sasuke's place and resumed the physical labor. Kakashi just had one thought. It must be pretty serious if they had to go like that. Naruto and Sasuke appeared right on top of the Yandame's head. Sasuke almost staggered and fell right over the spike if Naruto hadn't caught him in time. He turned around to stare into the blonde, but surprisingly, no one was there. He turned further to see that C was standing on the edge of the spike, looking over the bustling village. It's kind of beautiful, isn't it? Naruto's tone was soft, and Sasuke could not help but detect that there was a hint of longiness. Before he could think about it further, Naruto continued, the village is like a whole family, taking care of each other. The Hokage is like the head of the family, ensuring that there are no disputes. It must be nice a broken bar. Being a part of that family. Sasuke only looked at his teammate in confusion. Naruto's tone indicated that he was detached from the village, something that Sasuke never sensed from the blonde. Sure, he acted quite aloof and indifferent if only to piss people off, but from the day they had introduced themselves to Kakashi, Sasuke had only seen a strong determination in his eyes. Determination to make his dreams come true. Naruto had made it his ultimate mission to become the Hokage of Konoha, But there was something that Sasuke was missing over here. He said something else besides wanting to become Hokage, a broken bar to make others acknowledge him? That was something that triggered another memory for Sasuke. The word acknowledge made him remember his fight with Gaara. Gaara had repeatedly proclaimed that by killing others, he would prove his existence. Wasn't proving your existence the same thing as making others acknowledge you? Sasuke was getting pieces of something, but still lacked the material to make out what that something was. Where are you going with this? Naruto turned to him with a smile. You still don't see it? Sasuke frowned, trying to see where Naruto was leading him but came up with nothing. Naruto chuckled. This is part of the answer to your question, Sasuke. Gaara and the broken bar, you could say we are almost like brothers. Sasuke's head whipped up at that. He then suddenly remembered his thoughts during Naruto's fight with Gaara. Gaara's chakra was crushingly malicious, and Sasuke remembering that he had felt a similar chakra of Naruto during their fight with Haku. Is it your chakra? Naruto's eyes showed confusion. My chakra? Sasuke elaborated. When I was fighting Gaara, his chakra was full of malice, killing a broken bar. I had sensed a similar chakra from you back in Wave. Is that why you say you are like brothers? Naruto chewed on his lips as he thought of an answer. That is part of why I said that. The reason why I let them go a broken bar. Is because Gaara reminded me of myself. Sasuke's eyes went wide at that. He had a hard time imagining the usually cheerful but aloof blonde acting like Gaara. There was no way Naruto could be anything like Gaara. Unknowing of Sasuke's thoughts, Naruto continued. He and I share a great burden, and because of that burden, we both have lived our lives as if we were separate from our villages, not a part of them. I've felt the same loneliness and sadness in my life. Gaara thought that you can only become truly strong if you fight for yourself. But that's not true. Sasuke had a hard time on what to think. Naruto spared Gaara because he was able to identify the burden he had. But what burden could he be talking about? What burden are you talking about? And how can you not become strong if you are fighting for yourself? Naruto debated on whether to tell Sasuke or not, but decided to tell him in the end. He might not trust the guy completely, but it was better to tell him now instead of him accidentally discovering it in the future. Are you sure it is wise to tell him, Naruto? Naruto mentally nodded. I'm sure. Verbally, he said, I'll answer your question in reverse. Sasuke, the only way you can truly become strong is if you wish to protect someone you treasure. Sasuke frowned and asked, and what about the first question? Taking a deep breath, he calmed himself. He never thought that the first person he would be telling about Kurama would be Sasuke. What I'm about to tell you is still an S-rank secret, with only the Hokage allowed to speak about it. Never mind that almost every adult knows it anyway. Don't tell this to anyone. This is my secret. Understand? Naruto pinned him with his cold, arctic stare. Sasuke was a bit surprised at how serious the blonde was being, but understood. S-rank secrets were no joke at all. As you may recall, 13 years, the Yondaime supposedly killed, here he made air quotes as to mock the point, the Kyuubi at the cost of his life. What about it? Sasuke asked impatiently. Naruto folded his arms. Baijiu are masses of chakra, and chakra is essentially energy. According to the law of conservation of energy, energy cannot be created nor destroyed, but only transformed from one form to another. Sasuke's sharp mind linked the facts together, which means that a broken bar. Baijiu can't be killed. Naruto nodded. So if the Kyuubi wasn't killed, where is it? Naruto pursed his lips and replied, inside me, sealed away. Sasuke's eyes widened at the revelation. No wonder Naruto was so strong, he thought with bitter jealousy coursing through him again. Why was he chosen to be entrusted such power and not him? It would be foolish of me to assume that you're Kyuubi, since a sealing scroll doesn't become a kunai when a kunai is sealed inside it, Sasuke said slowly, after getting his thoughts in order, and reining in his jealousy. Naruto nodded with a smile, happy that Sasuke hadn't immediately jumped to a conclusion. Then is it the Kyuubi that makes you so strong? Naruto frowned, not liking the insult at all, however unintentional that was. As a matter of fact, I worked hard to reach where I am now. Sasuke, also, you remember the feel of Gaara's chakra when you fought him, right? Then you should have no problem in imagining the reactions of villagers if Gaara would have been in the village. Sasuke slowly nodded, thinking it over. Naruto had access to such power, but aside from wave, he never once used it. He then remembered the reactions of villagers when they looked at Naruto when he was small. The task of carrying such burden had made him hated by the villagers. Is that a broken bar? Why you said that Gaara was like you? The Yondaime was arguably the greatest seal master of his time, so there was no doubt that the seal he created to hold the Kyuubi would be strong. Gaara, on the other hand, his seal was shoddy work, and wasn't able to completely take away the influence of his Baijuu. Admirably though, he was able to hold on to himself, but not without some damage. After I beat him a broken bar. I told him that there wasn't any reason to not have friends. I had some people that were close to me, but not Gaara. By letting him go, I gave him another chance at making a better life for himself. I do hope he is better off now. Thought a broken bar. As Naruto gazed off into the distance, Sasuke found that there was much more to Naruto than what met the eye. He had a lot to think about when he got home, namely if he was choosing the right way in becoming strong to kill Itachi. Oh, and I would like my kunai back, if you please. I found out yesterday that I had one kunai missing. I still have to give the next order for them. His voice snapped Sasuke out of his thoughts, and he had the decency to look a bit sheepish at the slightly amused look Naruto was sending. It's really not that hard to guess why you want it, you know? Sasuke mumbled with a bit of red in his cheeks. I was just a bit curious. Is it because of those kunai that you are so fast? Naruto smirked. That's not to say that I neglected my raw speed, but you really should give it back. You can, in no way, decipher its secrets. Sasuke recovered and gave a challenging look. Really? Naruto just deadpanned. Yes, really. You really think you can decipher its function by studying just looking at 5 kanji? You need to be a seal master to even begin to understand the formula. Even I had to put 3 months worth of Fuinjutsu into creating the formula on the kunai. Sasuke mentally raged, but that just lasted for a second. He sighed and said, I'll get it back to you by tomorrow. Naruto smiled and stepped closer. Excellent. Now that we have finished our talk, let's get back. Kakashi must be fuming in jealousy at how long we are taking a break. Sasuke noticed Naruto's hand going for his shoulder. He only had a moment to prepare when they were suddenly standing back at their working place, facing a surprised Kakashi. He snapped his book shut and asked, So, you done wasting time? Naruto just shook his head and said, I made sure we had replacements. And don't you take the high road. You were reading that book all the while we were gone, so that day was interesting as well. Sasuke returned his kunai the first thing in the next morning. The next day was probably the best day of the week. On the same evening, council chamber, Hiruzen eyed the Shinobi Council with a sharp and critical eye, as if assessing them. The Shinobi Council consisted of all the Shinobi clan heads in Konoha, both major and minor. Some notable heads were Anuzuka Tsume, Narashikaku, Akimaki Trauza, Yamanaka Inoichi, Hyuga Hayashi and Aburame Shibi. There were some empty seats as well, such as the Hitake, the Uzumaki and the Namikes. It was understandable why the Hitake seat was empty, as Kakashi chose to remain a physically active Shinobi rather than becoming a politician. The reason why the Uzumaki and the Namikaze seats were empty was too sad and depressing to delve in. But enough of that. He hadn't called this meeting to reminisce about the past. No, this meeting was called so he could discuss a report of who should be promoted. Now, this may seem a bit of an inappropriate time for such a matter, but he felt that he should address this matter as soon as possible. It was time for him to choose a successor for him. But the problem was that the successor was absent from the village and as such, won't be able to make a logical decision as to who should be promoted. He fingered the notepad before him absently. It contained what he wrote down about everyone he saw fight, and in the event that he was killed, it was his last and final decision as Hokage. He had written down his choices of promotion on the notepad, along with the reasons. He eyed the elder standing on the side. Hamura, Koharu and Danzo were his old comrades. But after years of playing politics, they had become too jaded, too much stuck to the old ways. Hamura and Koharu he could handle, but it was Danzo he was concerned very much about. His old friend might seem like an old man, along with the other two, but Hiruzen was no fool. Even if he had no proof, he knew without a doubt that Danzo had been involved in multiple activities that he had no knowledge of. and there was no doubt that his old friends would protest against what he was about to do, but he would do it no matter what. Chauza was the first to open the meeting. "Hokage-sama, may I inquire as to why this meeting has been called?" Hiruzen nodded and said, "This meeting has been called by me to discuss possible promotions for Chunin." That indeed grabbed the attention of the whole council. Even Shikaku sat up a bit straighter, and the elders looked at Hiruzen in interest. Shibi's face could not be seen because of his high collar, but he spoke just like his son. "Excuse me for speaking this, Hokage-sama, but shouldn't we be concentrating more on our rebuilding efforts rather than promotions?" Hiruzen nodded at him. "I concede your point, Shibi-san, but there is another matter I need to address, one that is in conjunction with the promotions. You see, I am now long past my prime, so I have to choose another successor, again, but the problem is that the choice I have in mind is not present in the village for the moment. I fear that when they are chosen, they may not be able to make the logical choice for the promotions, as I am the one who took note of the fights." That seemed to satisfy Shibi, as he nodded and leant back a little in his chair. Koharu spoke next, her voice laced with curiosity. "Who do you have in mind, Hiruzen?" Hiruzen flipped open his notepad. "My first choice for promotion is Shikamaru." This caused mutters to rise amongst the council. Shikaku was now fully awake upon hearing that the Hokage was considering promoting his son to Chunin. His teammates gave him pats on the back with a smile, as a sign of congratulations, but Shikaku waved a hand for them to stop. He had a feeling that the Hokage had more to say. Hiruzen folded his hands under his chin. "First of all, I have to say that your son demonstrated excellent strategy against his opponent, Shikaku. He was very methodical and tactical in his approach, and he was able to keep a cool head in front of a seemingly superior opponent. Also, reports of the missions he has done with his team prior to the exam state his capability in leading a team." Shikaku narrowed his eyes. "I sense a but coming, Hokage-sama." Hiruzen nodded, but even with intellect of such caliber, he lacks some of the necessary qualities to become a Chunin. The foremost that I would like to address is that he seems to lack motivation. The fact that he only fought because Naruto sent him into the arena shows his unwillingness to fight. If he lacks the will to be a Chunin, then I feel he shouldn't receive the rank until he is ready. Hamura added his own point. "While what you are saying is true, Hokage-sama, sometimes unwilling, but potential candidates such as Shikamaru just need a push. Perhaps the responsibility that comes from being a Chunin might improve his work ethics." Hiruzen thought about it a bit and said, "That is true. I also point out that he needs to pull his physical skills up to par in case he finds himself against an opponent he cannot outthink. Only having intellect without having the necessary means to use it is meaningless. However, I put my faith in him that he will strive to improve in order to match the responsibilities that come with the position." Now, I would like to hear the council's opinion. Those who feel that Shikamaru should be promoted, raise their hands. Almost all of the clan heads raised their hands. Both the elders also raised their hands, but Hiruzen was not surprised to see Danzo not in favor of the Nara's promotion. Hiruzen nodded and noted it down. "Then it is decided that Shikamaru would be promoted to Chunin." Moving on to the next choice, he had broken bar. Uzumaki Naruto. He carefully gauged the faces of everyone in the room. The Shinobi clan head's eyes had widened in surprise, but he was pleased to note that there wasn't any hate or negative feeling he was used to see whenever Naruto's name was mentioned. The elders, on the other hand, were simply gaping at him, with the exception of Danzo, who had not reacted at all. Before they could speak, Hiruzen continued, "My next choice for promotion is Uzumaki Naruto, but that is not all. I have, after careful thought, considered this. I am nominating Uzumaki Naruto for the position of Jonin." Hiruzen was not surprised at all when gasps of shock and disbelief sounded in the room. In fact, he was willing to bet that if the civilian council had remained, they would have been shouting already. He raised his hand to stop the mutters, lowering it only when the silence had returned. Koharu was the first to speak. "Hokage-sama, you surely can't be serious?" It was as if she didn't want to believe that the demon container was even being considered for such a position. Hiruzen glared at her. "I am not in the mood for jokes." Koharu, turning to the council, he spoke, "Before you all start to speak, let me enlighten you as to what happened on the day of the invasion. He first started by telling them how he fought Neji. He highlighted Naruto's use of taijutsu against the prodigy of the Hyuga, but he pointed it out that Naruto had successfully kept Neji on his toes, even landing damaging hits. Hayashi didn't react, for he had already seen this. But the minuscule twitch under his left eye betrayed his irritation of being reminded of the Hyuga clan. Hey guys, just before we begin, a quick note before we begin, I'll take my time with this arc. A quick answer to a query of whether I will follow the canon or branch out : more or less, I started this story with the intent to see how the canon would progress if Naruto was more like his father. I might do some short prompts that deviate from the story once in a while. What if this Naruto met his father/Team Minato, something along those lines or something similar? I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys what you want to see. They had been walking for over 2 hours, with one short break in between. Nothing had been out of the ordinary, and shockingly, there had been periods of silence where neither of them would say anything, opting to enjoy the silence. Everything was good, until Naruto finally decided that he should do something productive to pass his time. "Hey, Iro-senin," he called, gaining the other man's irritated attention. Without waiting for him to speak, he continued, "Do you know the reason why we are looking for Tsunade?" Jiraiya gave him a confused look. "I thought you knew about her being the new Hokage, or have you forgotten?" Naruto scoffed. "I have a photographic memory, I forget nothing." In a more serious voice he continued, "But it's not about that, I'm asking whether you know why she abandoned the village?" Jiraiya flinched at the bluntness of the statement. As much as he wanted to correct Naruto, there was nothing he could say to refute the statement. He knew about Tsunade's losses in the last war, and why she chose to leave the village, but Naruto's words carried a harsh sense of truth to them. "I do, but it's not my place to tell," he replied. Naruto frowned, but said, "Fair enough, if he did not want to tell, it was fine, he could learn it later on his own." But there was something he needed to know. "Is she a missing nin?" Jiraiya almost missed his step at the question, turning to glare at the blonde. "What?" Naruto was not at all perturbed by Jiraiya's sudden anger. He reiterated, "I asked if she was a missing nin." Jiraiya was indignant. "Do you even realize what you are saying? She is related to the first 2 Hokages by blood and the student of the third, not to mention one of the legendary Sannin, who by the way, were granted traveling rights by the daimyo of Hinokuni himself." Naruto adjusted the strap of his backpack a little. This was the first time he was wearing one. "I know that, trust me, the books are full about the feats of you three. Tsunade's legendary prowess as a medic is known throughout the world, but answer me this. She has not stepped a foot in the village for the last 10 years, and by extension, not performed a single mission for it. Once I asked Gigi that why was it that you were allowed to spend so much time outside the village. He told me that you were only allowed to do so for you had a spy network to maintain, right?" Jiraiya frowned, but was still confused as to where Naruto was leading him, but nodded nonetheless. "Which means that you are only allowed to travel as long as you keep doing missions for the village. If we go by the context, Tsunade has been abusing her Sannin traveling rights. Not only has she been out of contact inside of the village, but she hasn't done a single mission for Konoha for quite an extended period of time, not unlike a missing nin, won't you say?" Jiraiya had narrowed his eyes at the end of Naruto's question. Naruto's words felt like ice-cold water rushing down his back. Everything he had said had been brutally correct, but it was his teammate they were talking about, and he would be damned if he let anyone talk about her this way without knowing what she went through. "Watch your mouth, brat, you don't know what she has been through." Jiraiya's tone held warning, and Naruto took that as his cue to drop the topic. It was obvious as sunlight that Jiraiya deeply cared for Tsunade if he was defending her like that, but from Jiraiya's statement, he was able to learn that Tsunade went through quite a few losses, and she left the village to have some time to herself. But 10 years was way too long, and if they were retrieving her, it was quite clear for him to see that Tsunade had no real intention of coming back to the village herself. But there was something he still couldn't quite understand. Everyone had dead people, but that was no reason for them to be stuck on them for such a long time. For a seasoned shinobi like Tsunade, she should have been able to let go and carry on with her life. So why didn't she? He would have to learn for it himself. After 15 more minutes, a town came into their sight. "All right, brat," Jiraiya's voice snapped him out of his thoughts. "We're approaching a traveling town, so here are the rules. Since Tsunade is quite elusive of the Shinobi I sent for her, blending in is necessary from this point on, so remove your Jonin jacket and hit tie 8. Naruto gave him a deadpan look. "Oh, sure." Bright blonde hair is totally blending in, not to mention a large, gorilla-sized man in bright red clothes and white hair longer than an average girl. Jiraiya whacked Naruto's head, causing the blonde to yelp. "Don't mock the hair, brat, and I blend in very well. Thank you very much." Naruto sighed as he sealed his jacket and hit tie 8 into a scroll and put it in his backpack. He took out a single, black-colored sash, tying it around his head like the hit tie 8. "Sometimes I wonder how is it that you became a spy master?" Jiraiya smirked. "I have my secrets." Naruto shook his head as he took out his black and red, half-sleeves jacket as well. He always felt incomplete without one. "I'm sure you do. Is this good enough?" Jiraiya inspected him with a critical eye. "It's passable." Naruto frowned. "Why, what's wrong with this?" Jiraiya smirked and pointed a finger at his godson. "Oh, nothing's actually wrong, but trust me, you'll be attracting a lot of attention from the female kind with that kind of look." Naruto froze for a moment. He took a moment to properly blurt it out. "Say what?" Jiraiya laughed heartily as they closed in on the town. "Don't worry, Gaki, it's actually a good thing. You don't get many chances to appreciate the female body, the lips, the curve as a broken bar." Naruto made a disgusted face as Jiraiya's expression turned into a look worthy of a super pervert. For Kami's sake, the man was making grabbing motions in the air. He did not need to be an expert to know what Jiraiya was imagining. He kicked the man in the shin. "Get a hold of yourself." Jiraiya was the one who yelped this time, clutching his shin painfully and hopping on one foot. "You'll pay for this, Naruto." Naruto was smirking as he continued walking ahead. "I probably know more about how the female body feels up close than you do, Jiraiya." His steamy make-out session with Temari was one of his most treasured memories. XXXXXXX. Naruto and Jiraiya wouldn't have been in such a mood if they knew just what was happening in Konoha. Two intruders slipped quietly into the village, undetected. They were covered with black coats with a pattern of red clouds, quietly sitting down in a tea shop. They wore wide-brimmed straw hats to cover the parts of their faces shown above the high collar of the cloaks. The shorter one of them, who was eating dango, was the first to notice. He motioned to the larger one, the three jonin who were eyeing them. Quietly, they paid their tab and left the shop. "We should leave. It appears that the Jinchuriki isn't here," a low, monotone voice said to his partner. The cloaked strangers kept walking. They were passing a lake when they both stopped. Silently, they turned to face the two newcomers, Suma and Kurenai. "You two don't seem to be from the village of Broken Bar. Who are you guys?" Asuma asked in a voice that meant all business. "It's been a long time, Asuma-san." "Kurenai-san," the shorter one commented in a rather pleasant tone of voice. "So you are a shinobi of this village," Asuma commented, puffing on his cigarette. "What did you come here for?" The shorter of the duo lifted his straw hat slightly, revealing his eyes, both of which had a blazing Sharingan in them, which made Asuma and Kurenai go wide-eyed. "No doubt about it," Asuma muttered as the shinobi removed his straw hat and unbuttoned his cloak slightly, revealing a young and handsome face with black hair, lines under his eyes, and a Konoha forehead protector with a slash through it. "Akaichi." "So, you are already acquainted with Ichi-san, huh? Then, I also need to introduce myself," the taller of the duo said as he removed his own straw hat, to reveal a blue-skinned man with very sharp teeth, beady eyes, and what looked like gills on his cheekbones. "Hoshigaki Kisame, nice to make your acquaintance." "You're not making any acquaintances here," Asuma said with a small smirk on his face. "It looks like we've got a task to take you on. Ichi-san, your home village doesn't seem to like you very much," Kisame commented. "I've also heard of you," Kurenai said, staring at Kisame. Hoshigaki Kisame, formerly of Kirigakure no Sato, a renegade ninja wanted by numerous countries, including the Water Country, for assassinating a feudal lord, and sabotage, as well as various other crimes. You boys are listed as S-rank criminals in the bingo book, you know, Asuma said. The smirk disappearing. Ichi, coming back to this village after what you pulled, Asuma-san, Kurenai-san, I have no wish to kill you, Ichi said. Please do not interfere with my affairs. Can't really just walk away, Asuma said. What is your purpose here? Suddenly, Kisame grabbed his sword and swung it down with enough force to crack the ground when it hit, kicking up a lot of dust. This person is quite annoying, the shark man said, a grin on his face. Shall I kill him? It does look like we can't leave the village without a fight, Ichi said, not looking away from Asuma for a second. But don't overdo it, your style attracts too much attention. It's settled, then, Kisame said as he lifted his sword again to rest it against his shoulder. For a few moments, there was silence as everyone just stared at each other. Then, Kisame moved with incredible speed, swinging at Asuma, who drew a pair of trench knives and blocked the swing. Asuma gritted his teeth as he struggled, the sword coming lower and lower. I'm being pushed down by just the tip of his sword. What kind of monster is he? Slowly, the sword was placed against Asuma's shoulder, which made Kisame grin. The shark man pulled the sword back, making Asuma grunt in pain when he felt something tear against his shoulder, looking to see the bandages coming off the sword's tip, revealing not a blade, but a series of downward-facing scales running along the entirety of its length. My great sword Samada doesn't cut. It shaves, Kisame announced with a grin. Suddenly, Asuma grinned slightly. Despite the pain, Kurenai, you're late. Kisame's eyes widened as it appeared as though he suddenly started sinking into the ground, but Ichi looked quite unaffected, even as roots shot up from the ground and wrapped around him, a tree forming behind him. Above the Akaya, Kurenai came out of the tree trunk, raising a kunai. This is the end, Kurenai announced, stabbing the kunai downward. A blink was all it took, and Kurenai suddenly found that the tables had turned. All of a sudden she was the one wrapped up in roots, and before her stood Ichi, looking emotionless as usual. Genjutsu of this level have no effect on me. This is Genjutsu counter. Kurenai thought as Ichi drew a kunai. She closed her eyes and bit her own lip, drawing blood. The pain was enough to cancel the Genjutsu, and she opened her eyes in time to see Ichi coming at her. She ducked, the swipe from the kunai only managing to cut a few of her hairs, but that wasn't enough. A foot came flying at her at an intense speed, and she raised her arms to block. The kick was powerful, though, and sent her flying out over the river. Kurenai, Asuma yelled, looking in her direction, which made Kisame chuckle as he raised his sword again. Not paying attention will be the end of you. The sword came swinging down just as Asuma turned to him, but Asuma was caught off guard so easily. He leaned to the side to avoid the swipe of the large sword, and slashed Kisame's face. The aforementioned nin's eyes widened as blood trickled from a small cut that was made by Asuma, with his wind-covered blades. Ichi looked down at Kurenai with dispassionate eyes. Nicely blocked, Kurenai-san, but this is the end. For you. Ichi's eyes narrowed and glanced to the side, behind him where the owner of the said voice was standing. Kakashi glanced at Ichi's back with his Sharingan. There was no doubt at all that even if he held a blade to Ichi's back, the Sharingan wielder was anything but helpless against him. He grimly thought, fighting Ichi is no pushover. He must have gotten stronger than when he left the village. I'll have to assume the worst case scenario in this fight. Time skip. Kakashi was barely standing as he gazed at the two missing nin. He was out of strength, breath and chakra. He had made a foolish mistake of looking into Ichi's eyes, and now he was done for. Just what a broken bar the hell a broken bar was that? Kakashi tried to analyze just how did Ichi possess such a strong genjutsu. His eye certainly didn't have this ability. Ichi had called the technique Tsukuyomi, a genjutsu of his design that was somehow connected to space-time, for Ichi had tortured him for over 72 hours in there, while in reality, only a second had passed. He didn't know just how Ichi had did it, but it had clearly worked. Kakashi was out of the fight. He fell down to his hands and knees. No, I can't black out now. The reinforcements should be almost here. I'll have to stealth aim a broken bar. Why area broken bar Utah a broken bar. Here. Ichi spoke as if he did not fight at all. We're after the legacy of the Yondaime Hokage. Kakashi wasn't surprised at all, while Asuma's and Kurenai's eyes had widened. By this time, it was no secret to the whole village who that was. Asuma muttered, "You are after the Kibai inside Naruto, aren't you?" The silence was enough of an answer. Kakashi knew he had to stall them for a little more time. "I know you aren't the only ones who are moving around. The name of your organization a Broken Bar. It's Akatsuki, isn't it?" Ichi's eyes widened imperceptibly, while Kisame had a more visible reaction. A surprised grunt escaped his throat as he stared hard at Kakashi. Kakashi mentally smirked. It was a good thing that Jiraiya-sama had told him about the organization that was after people like Naruto. "Kill him, Kisame," Ichi suddenly ordered. The blue man grinned savagely. With pleasure, he raised his sword and blazed towards Kakashi, intent on chopping him into pieces. Kanoe ga Riki Senpuu. The kick caught Kisame right in the face, sending him skidding across the surface of the lake. Back to Ichi, Kisame righted himself, and was met with an odd sight. A man in a green, spandex one-piece suit with a jonin flak jacket. His most noticeable features were his bowl-cut hair and thick eyebrows. Kakashi sighed in relief. "Guy a Broken Bar, who are you?" Gay settled into his taijutsu stance. "Konoha's noble blue beast a Broken Bar. May I doge?" Kisame snorted. "You should take a closer look at yourself. You look more like an odd beast." Gay didn't seem to hear him as he easily lifted Kakashi onto his shoulders and said, "You too, open your eyes, but don't look at Ichi in the eyes." Asuma and Kurenai opened their eyes, taking in the scene. Ichi closely analyzed the scene and weighed his odds. Gay was exceptionally strong, and he had ways to fight the Sharingan. Also, he must have signaled the reinforcements on his way to here. They needed to get out of here. "Enough, Kisame," he softly said, when his partner looked at him in confusion. He said, "We've attracted enough attention. We did not come here to start a war. We're leaving." Kisame sighed in genuine disappointment as he put away his sword. "And I was just starting to get excited a Broken Bar, but it seems we have no choice." Ichi and Kisame then disappeared. Asuma and Kurenai relaxed as Guy shifted Kakashi a bit. He turned around and said with a serious voice that he rarely used, "I don't need to tell you that the return of Ichi to this village must be kept a secret from a certain someone, do I?" Asuma and Kurenai nodded. "We'll tell the others to keep their mouths shut around him." Guy nodded and then smiled. "Good. Then I will get Kakashi to the hospital." XXXXXXX. Naruto sighed in mild irritation as he spun his kunai in his fingers almost lazily, sitting on his bed in the hotel room he and Jiraiya had rented for the night. This was only supposed to be a small stop in the town until Jiraiya had spotted a pretty young woman who had winked at him. Almost immediately, Jiraiya had waved him off to find a hotel room for the night while he gathered some information. Naruto snorted. He knew damn well Jiraiya was following after the woman from earlier like a lovesick puppy. And he thought that this was an urgent mission. Still, there was something that Naruto had noticed when the woman had winked at Jiraiya. First off, Jiraiya was not even that good looking. He was just an old man in his 50s. No sane young woman would so much as even look in his direction that way the woman from earlier did. Second, the woman was pretty. Pretty as in above average pretty. She wore a strapless dress that was designed to show off her well-endowed chest and long legs, along with high heels. She could have gotten any man, but she went straight for Jiraiya. She did not even glance at the other men that were standing in the lobby with them. That was another thing that rang alarm bells in his mind. Also, it looked as if that woman was dressed to entice, or seduce someone, unless she was heading out on a date. That too alone. Why would a woman dress up to entice Jiraiya? Also, Jiraiya had been correct in the regard that he would attract female attention. As soon as they had entered the town, whenever they would pass by a girl close to his age, she would blush and giggle. It was slightly confusing and scary to be honest. One girl was brave enough to even come to him and asked if he wanted to spend some time with her and her friends. He had barely kept from freaking out, and Jiraiya had just walked off somewhere, leaving him alone to deal with the girl. Thankfully, Naruto was able to gently let her down by using the classic excuse he was here to train with his master and the time for training was drawing to a close. The girl had been visibly disappointed, but had understood. Surprising him, she had whispered an address in his ear, telling that if he was free, he was allowed to come over there, and she had kissed him on the cheek before leaving. Who the hell kisses random strangers on cheeks? Before Naruto could think up on this further, the knock of a door snapped him out of his thoughts. His eyes narrowed as he sensed two large chakra signatures outside his door, one astoundingly enough, a bit bigger than his own. The other one, he sensed, was shockingly similar to his teammate, Sasuke. There was no way he was going to answer the door himself. His danger sense was ringing bells in his head. He soundlessly created a shadow clone, who began to move towards the door. His footsteps were loud enough for Naruto to cover his own as he flipped out of the window. He knew that whoever was outside wouldn't be fooled by it, but it would have to do. He doubted that they were here just to say hello. He would have flashed over to Jiraiya to get him, but that idea had a risk. First of all, if he suddenly flashed in the middle of a crowd and disappeared with a person, it would cause panic in the crowd. Yeah, not happening. Looks like I would have to give him a noticeable signal to arrive here, Naruto thought as he flipped up to the roof and headed to the window at the end of the corridor. Naruto opened the door and found himself looking up into a pair of a fully matured Sharingan. His first thought was Sasuke, but then his thought process kicked in. First, this guy was taller than him, and Sasuke was 4 inches shorter than him. Second, his hairstyle was different, and he had tear troughs under his eyes. Third, he wore a Konoha Hittite which was slashed, indicating he was a missing nin. Yep, he was facing Akaichi. Shit, I never thought I would have to meet Akaichi of all people. The clone thought as he diverted his eyes from the Sharingan to Ichi's forehead. He carefully kept his face blank of any emotions. To think this boy contains the Kyuubi broken bar, came a voice from beside Ichi, as a very distinct figure came into view. This man was taller than Jiraiya, and he had very obvious blue skin and shark-like features, such as facial markings that resembled like fish gills. He was also carrying a very large, bandaged blade. His clothing matched Ichi's a long black cloak with red clouds on it. He was also wearing a slashed Kiri Hittite, making him a missing nin, unless I'm mistaken, which is a very low chance. This guy is a former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. And what's the deal with his chakra? It's almost as big as Prime's, maybe even a bit bigger. And they know about Kurama, so I can guess they are here for him. Naruto-kun, you're coming with us, Ichi said in a monotone as he gazed at his target. He was not expecting Naruto to look like this at all. No, he wasn't talking about how he was gazing at a literal, carbon copy of the Yondaime. He was talking about Naruto's stature. He was expecting a genin, a 12 to 13-year-old. Naruto looked like he was almost 15 and not a genin at all. Instead, Naruto's posture did not portray any fear or anxiety one might have when facing a S-rank criminal. He was smart, for he immediately averted his eyes to his forehead. The posture was straight, and very carefully guarded. Ichi might have thought he was relaxed, even, if not for the barely noticeable tensing of shoulders and the subsequent clenching of fists. Naruto stared hard at Ichi. Why, a broken bar? Let's go outside the room, Ichi opted to say. He watched, in silent approval, as Naruto carefully stepped out of the room, keeping him and Kisame in his sights. He came to stand in front of them, keeping his feet slightly apart, and hands at his sides. Naruto had no intention of running, for Prime should be here any moment now. His job was only to distract, so he began talking. Why do I have the honor of meeting Akaichi and a former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist? If Ichi was shocked, he didn't show it, because he was damn good at hiding his emotions. People found blank walls easier to read instead of him. Kisame, however, grinned. A smart one, aren't you? Naruto just folded his hands across his chest and gave the shark man a dry look. I don't need to be smart in order to label you as one of the 7 swordsmen. Your giant sword gives it away, not to mention the slashed Hittite. Kisame turned to Ichi. Ichi-san, it would be a bother to us if this kid keeps moving around. Perhaps I should chop off his legs? Naruto didn't even look the least disturbed at the threat. In fact, a broken bar. I dare you to try. Kisame chuckled and slowly moved forward, clutching the handle of his sword. Your bravado is amusing, but you must be a fool if you think you can stand and win against me. Ichi watched as Kisame closed onto Naruto. Something was wrong here. he thought. Naruto looked like he won't be making a move anytime soon. He was relaxed, too relaxed. A broken bar. Move Kisame. The command was spoken softly, but it still carried power and urgency. Kisame heard it and was barely able to move in time, for Naruto glowed and exploded with a bang, blasting the walls and any area near him. Meanwhile, Naruto heard the bang and smirked from his position outside the window of the corridor. The explosion was something he hadn't taken into account, but it wasn't a bad thing either. The clone's job was only to distract the newcomers, but this works as well. A good thing the entire floor was empty. He would go through the memories later. Ichi and Kisame stared at the spot where the clone used to be. Exploding Cage Bunshin. Ichi whispered in the slightest wonder. It looks like Naruto was smarter than he previously thought, and very perceptive too. He had known the danger of them and had a shadow clone answer in his place. They had been talking to a shadow clone all this time. Kisame gave a grunt of irritation as he looked at his slightly burned hand. It had been way too close. Looks like the Jinchuriki is going to be more trouble than we thought, he muttered as he healed the burn with his chakra. Ichi, on the other hand, was thinking what this could mean. Naruto was obviously not here. He was out and had left a shadow clone in his place to keep guard. That, or Naruto had somehow known they were here and had gone to call Jiraiya. But, they both jumped a bit sideways, letting the bolt of red lightning pass in between them and collapse wall on the end of the corridor to splinters. Ichi and Kisame turned their heads to see the real Naruto standing behind them, right hand extended and the other holding a kunai. Naruto smirked at the looks on their faces, more like the look on Kisame's face. Ichi was as blank as empty paper. Kisame was baring his sharp teeth in annoyance. I can't believe you fell for that. Apparently, Kisame did not like the mock at all. So one second he was standing beside Ichi, the other he was right in Naruto's personal space, sword ready to cut him. The power behind the strike was enough to shatter a piece of the wall behind him, and would have sliced Naruto in half. Keywords, would have. Kisame did not know of the danger sense Naruto possessed, nor of the slower perception it granted Naruto. The danger sense rang loudly, and the world had slowed down for Naruto as soon as Kisame had taken the step towards him. Naruto had watched in slow motion as Kisame flew towards him. He would have to give credit to the guy, for he was almost as fast as Kakashi, with the blade. So he was right in front of Naruto in only a second. Oh, and neither Ichi nor Kisame knew of the marking Naruto had put on the other end of the corridor as a safety precaution. Kisame shattered part of the wall in front of him with Samada. He had intended to cut off the legs of the brat so he couldn't run anymore, but to his shock, he wasn't even standing in front of him anymore. Over here, Slowpoke. Kisame whirled around to see Naruto nonchalantly leaning against the wall on the opposite end of the corridor. Even Ichi couldn't conceal his surprise as his eyes were wide as well. Kisame's wide eyes reflected his thoughts clearly. How did he move so fast? I didn't even see him moving. Ichi's thoughts were a bit more sophisticated than his partner's. While it was a bit much to cut off Naruto's legs, it would certainly make their job easier. He had thought that Kisame had got Naruto with the strike, but he had dodged it. Not only that, but it looked like he barely put any effort into it. Even with his Sharingan, he hadn't been able to track Naruto's movement, and that was speaking something since his Sharingan was of the highest evolution. That was the speed Naruto had so nonchalantly pulled off. All he had seen was a tiny, almost unnoticeable flash of neon blue. It was almost like he had teleported a broken bar. Ichi's train of thought was brought to a sudden stop. Surely not a broken bar. He couldn't have mastered that jutsu. A broken bar. There's no way a broken bar. Kisame slowly walked back to where Ichi was standing. His face cleared of the shock from earlier. He could see from the look on Ichi's face that even he hadn't seen the boy move. He slowly grinned in excitement. This might be a challenge after all. It's been a long time. A broken bar. Sasuke. XXXXXXX. Naruto may acted playful on the outside, but inside he was all serious. That sword. A broken bar. He had felt as if it wasn't just taking his life. There was some sort of pull in that sword, but Naruto had flashed away before it could make contact. Seemingly, it could take chakra of its opponents. Also, Jiraiya should have reached here by now. He had caused 2 explosions, enough for Jiraiya to come here as fast as he could. He had activated his sensing, and he was sensing Jiraiya closing in fast. However, He sensed another person that caused a pit to form in his stomach. Why the hell was he here? It's been a long time. A broken bar. Sasuke. Naruto watched with narrowed eyes and a small hint of annoyance as he noticed Sasuke standing behind the two missing nin. Kisame turned around to glance at the newcomer as well. Who? Sasuke represented the classic picture of a guy wanting revenge. Form straight, legs spread slightly apart, hands at the side and hair shadowing the front of his face. When he glanced up, Naruto could see it. The Sharingan was blazing, and the burning hate in those eyes was unmistakable. Akai broken bar. Chi. Sasuke was trembling in rage as he gazed at his older brother. When he had found out that his brother was in the village courtesy of a loose-lipped jonin looking for Naruto of all people, his blood had nearly turned to ice. He knew Naruto was strong, very strong for his age, strong enough that he had been promoted straight to jonin, but his brother was in another league entirely. No matter how powerful Naruto was now, Ichi would utterly destroy him. He had immediately set off. Hey readers, welcome back. I know many are anxious about how I will have Naruto meet Tsunade this chapter, now that he has mastered the Rasengan as well. Truthfully speaking, I will be a bit against Tsunade at the beginning, for a warning, as I felt she was let off too easy, but that will be over as soon as I put the will of fire back in her. Enjoy. The streets were as lively as they were in the day, but it was noticeable to Naruto that people were starting to slowly go back to their homes and resting places. For those who were out of town, it was strange how sometimes, Naruto didn't have much to think about rather than the present, but a topic weighed quite heavily on his mind, him becoming the clan head to both of his clans. Now that he was a jonin, his political responsibilities had significantly increased, not to mention that he was now the last of both clans. One good thing about this though, was that he would now be allowed to live in his parents' house. Before he could dwell on it further, a mental call from his tenant snapped his attention. Naruto, I need to talk to you. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Kurama was sounding unusually serious this time. Right now? Yes, right now. Wow, not only was he unusually serious, but a little impatient and irritated as well. But for what reason? As far as he could recall, he had done nothing to aggravate Kurama. He would have asked the Baijiu to continue their conversation like it was going now. But something in Kurama's tone told him that this conversation required some face-to-face talk. Alright, then. In a blink, he was pulled into his mindscape, arriving at the valley on the edge of the great lake that represented his massive chakra reserves. Kurama was sitting right in front of him, on his hands and gazing right at him, hot air rushing past him whenever he exhaled. What's up, Kurama? I am good, if only a little bored. Even with having access to your eyes, events of the world tends to get a bit boring every now and then. Kurama smirked at the end. Naruto smirked in return. The world has heard your complaint, and it has been dutifully ignored. Now, what's the matter? Kurama's smirk disappeared as the atmosphere turned serious. I wanted to talk to you about your fight earlier. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You mean, with Ichi and Kisame? Kurama nodded. That one. Those men are extremely dangerous, Naruto. Even at your level, you would struggle against just one of them. Naruto took a deep breath as he considered Kurama's words. He was not wrong exactly. Ichi and Kisame were in a league all of their own. They were part of an organization that was after the Baijiu sealed in the Jinchuriki, so it went without saying that he would have to face them at some point down the line. What's your point? My point is that some extra training should be undertaken. More specifically, I personally think that it's time you started to learn how to use the greatest resource at your disposal, Kurama offered. Naruto didn't need to be a genius to know just what his friend was hinting at. You want me to start learning how to use your chakra? Yes. Naruto had some lingering doubt. Do you believe that I'm ready for this, though? After all, your power is no joke at all. Kurama grinned, exposing the sharp row of teeth he had. You've been ready for using it for quite some time. Don't tell me that you're chickening out. Naruto snorted. Your jokes have no sense of humor. So how will we do it? Kurama looked Naruto dead in the eyes. I will begin training you in the use of my chakra. I have an inkling that because you have an impressive grasp on your emotions, you will be quick to master the more difficult part of it. But remember this, Naruto, that when the time comes, I want you to be able to fully use my chakra without relying on me as a buffer. Naruto looked at Kurama, his face not betraying a single emotion. Such a thing did not faze Kurama at all, so he waited, knowing that his patience would be rewarded. Naruto always thought things as serious as theses quite thoroughly, weighing every pro and con, to him and to others, in the present and in the future. If it means that I can be strong enough to protect those who I care about, I'll do it. The resolve was as strong as Kurama was used to, unbreakable and unshakable, pure ass-kicking resolve. He grinned, glad that you were not so hard-headed about this, but don't think that mastering a tale will be easy, even for you. One tale of mine does not equate to one tale of the Akebi, you hear? It's a totally different scale. Naruto chuckled. I never expected something of this scale to be this easy, Kurama, and where would be the fun in life if things were always easy? He got up from his spot beside Kurama. I'll see you later, Kurama. With that, he exited his mindscape and found himself looking back at the lighted streets of Tanzaku Town. He looked around, spotted the board of a shop and concluded that not even a full minute had passed since his talk with Kurama. In fact, he doubted even 5 seconds had passed. He inwardly grinned. The human mind was a strange place sometimes, an entirely different world where everything went his way. Hey, Iro-senin, he nudged the man walking beside him. He had spread out his senses, and had located the large chakra source they were towards. It was slightly larger than that of Jiraiya's, and that was saying something since the sage had massive reserves of chakra. Another source of chakra was right next to it. An average source of chakra, huh? Jiraiya looked over to his student. What? I need to use a bathroom. You keep going, I'll join you. With that, Naruto turned right and walked towards a restaurant, not even waiting to hear Jiraiya's reply. The toad sage in question had a twitching eyebrow as he watched the blonde leisurely move away. To admit, bringing Naruto was a part of his plans to convince Tsunade to return to Konoha, not due to the fact that they were distantly related, but also for another reason, the same reason that made him feel like a dick every time he thought about it. He sighed, and continued on his way. Naruto was a sensory type, and as such, would have no problem in locating where he was. Plus he also had Naruto's Hiraishin marking on his person. Naruto always knew where he was. With these thoughts he reached the bar in which Tsunade was in. He smiled nostalgically. I wonder how drunk she is right now. It has been a while since she went inside. He was about to enter it when, I do hope you don't plan on flirting with her all the time. He almost jumped, and he certainly did not yelp at the sudden voice next to him because he was a goddamn S-rank shinobi. He turned to glare at Naruto, who was not smirking at all, but his eyes held a playful glint in them. The same glint he always saw in Kushina's eyes that always meant that Minato was going to get his ass pranked. You did that on purpose, didn't you? I don't know what you are talking about, Naruto smoothly replied as he entered the bar. To be honest, he really wasn't intending to scare the man, but then again, the man should have been accustomed to this from his father. He was sure the man had done this several times as well, unless he was a buzzkill. Jiraiya followed him, muttering something unintelligibly. His eyes roamed over the entire bar, taking in everything. The couple 3 tables to their right, the disguised nobleman at the bar, the thief sitting right beside the nobleman, unaware of the disguise, and finally, his eyes came to rest upon what, or rather, who they were after. She wasn't exactly inconspicuous, not with that large chakra signature. With her sat a woman with shoulder-length dark hair in a modest blue kimono and ninja sandals, holding on to a little pig with a necklace of pearls around his neck. She seemed to be somewhat concerned at how much sake Tsunade seemed to gulping down. Tsunade, Jiraiya yelled, as if he was actually shocked on seeing her there. Tsunade's head jerked up, and Naruto could tell by the blush on her cheeks that she was well on her way to being wasted. Jiraiya, her shock was more genuine. Naruto could tell that she was truly surprised to see her former teammate over here. Her gaze then shifted onto him, and Naruto saw, if only for a fleeting moment, the shock that appeared in her eyes before being carefully concealed. So she knows who I am, he mused. Jiraiya sauntered over to her and without even asking for her permission, he sat down. Naruto followed suit and sat down beside Jiraiya, directly facing the dark-haired woman. Order up, kid, I bet you're hungry, Jiraiya told him, and with a nod, he picked up the menu to look through it. completely ignoring the nervous gaze of the woman for the moment. "It has been a long time, hasn't it, Tsunade?" Jiraiya asked, friendly and openly. Naruto ordered, and the food was brought quickly. As he ate his salmon, he greeted the other woman. "Good evening." "Good evening as well. I am Shizu." "You are?" Shizu introduced herself with a soft smile. Naruto smiled back. "Uzumaki Naruto, and perhaps you should wear this senbon launcher on the underside of your forearm to better conceal it. Anyone with good eyes could spot the small bumps made by the launchers on your sleeve." Shizu blinked in surprise. "You can see it?" Naruto shrugged. "I tend to notice things like those pretty easily. It's more of a developed habit." "Let's not play games here, Jiraiya." "What the hell do you want?" Tsunade barked, rather harshly in Naruto's opinion. Just what had Jiraiya done to invoke such rudeness? In the corner of his eye, he watched as Jiraiya steeled himself ever so slightly. "All right, let's not play games then." A broken bar. Tsunade, you are ordered to return to Konoha and become the Godame Hokage. Tsunade blinked, just staring at Jiraiya for a moment before shaking her head, as if amused. "I've been seeing a lot of old friends today," she muttered. Jiraiya inquired. "It was Orochimaru, wasn't it?" The silence from Tsunade and the slight widening of Shizu's eyes was all the answer that he needed. "What happened?" The tone of the question was calm, but Naruto could hear the suspicion in it. Anything that concerned Orochimaru was serious business, and if he was visiting the greatest medic nin in the world, perhaps Naruto had injured him more than he thought. Tsunade answered flippantly, "Nothing, we just exchanged a greeting, that's all." At this point, Naruto snorted, and quite heavily, for Tsunade turned upon him. She spoke within a slightly angry tone. "Something funny, brat?" Naruto put down his chopsticks and stared back at her, a mocking smile on her face. "How about telling the truth? Orochimaru hardly seems the kind of person to visit someone to simply exchange a greeting." Tsunade narrowed her eyes at Naruto, sparks of anger slowly growing, but instead of speaking to him, she addressed Jiraiya. "Who is this disrespectful brat you have with you?" "Jiraiya." Before Jiraiya could answer, Naruto did. He didn't know why, but he suddenly had an urge to exchange a war of words with her. It has been so long since he had won. He rested his elbows on the table. "Please avoid asking such pointless questions you already know the answer to, Tsunade-sama." He kept his tone entirely respectful, but the insinuation was clear as fresh water. "We both know just who and what I am." If she denied, she would be calling herself stupid, for Naruto wasn't hiding his resemblance to his father at all. A short gasp of air caused him to break the staring contest with Tsunade and look over to Shizu, whose eyes were wide with realization and mouth open for a gasp as she stared at him. Smirking, he turned back to the older blonde. "And for the record, I never insulted you in our conversation. I was simply stating facts." "You are the who addressed us with rudeness," he said coolly, ignoring Jiraiya's alarmed expression and minute shake of head that said, "Don't do it." Tsunade glared heavily at him, whispering, "You have some nerve saying that to my face, Gaki." Apparently, she still seemed to have some form of self-restraint, for she turned back to Jiraiya, dismissing him just like that. "Anyway, I'll pass. Only fools become Hokage." Naruto rose and eyebrow in amusement at her reason, whereas Jiraiya pouted. "That's pretty harsh for me, you know. My greatest student became a Hokage, you know." "Yeah? And where is he now?" she returned, though not as harshly as before. "All I'm saying is that the track record for the Hokages isn't the greatest. Even Sensei, the man retired only to come back after the death of his successor, and just barely survived the recent invasion. Even your student, he only wasted his life saving that village from the Kyuubi." She even looked at Naruto with a raised eyebrow to emphasize her point. Mirth and amusement slowly faded from Naruto's eyes as he glared at the woman, replaced by anger and disgust. He could bear people mocking the title of the Hokage. He easily dismissed those type of people who could never understand what the Hokage stood for. He could also bear people who mocked him for having such a dream. He had been hearing such mocks all his life, but never had he, ever, heard anyone mock his father, the Yondaime. Sure, people had their own opinions about others, but to insult a man who sacrificed his own family for the sake of his village, and she even had the nerve to look at him, all the while insulting his father and surrogate grandfather. Naruto's opinion of her had substantially plummeted. Wasn't she aware that she was not only insulting her own sensei, but her own grandfather and granduncle as well? The two people who laid the foundation for Konoha? This was the woman who was supposed to be the Godame Hokage. Talk about having the will of fire. There weren't even embers inside her, let alone flames. Jiraiya raised his hands in a placating motion to calm her down. He himself had flinched when she had insulted Minato, who was almost like a son to him, but he kept his anger in check, for that wasn't going to help in bringing her back to the village. Now, Tsunade, don't be like that. You have been gone for a long time. I want nothing to do with Konoha, and anyone who is affiliated with it. I will never accept the position of the Hokage, just because Sensei stupidly believed that. Her rant was interrupted by Naruto, who spoke in a mock-surprised tone. I'm sorry, I think you are mistaken that this is a request. Sandaime Hokage has ordered us to bring you back. Tsunade mockingly smirked at him, leaning forward. Naruto kept his eyes from floating downwards, where her breasts had been pushed together. Let's say that I care. What is there that could make me want to come back to Konoha? At this point, Jiraiya watched, slightly concerned over how Naruto handled Tsunade. It was suicidal to piss her off, and there was no other person who knew better than him. He knew that sweet words won't convince her in the slightest, but he could lose her forever if he let this go out of hand. Unfortunately, that was exactly what Naruto was doing right now. Naruto was highly pragmatic, almost to the point of being ruthless. He had no difficulty in laying out the pills that were harder to swallow: protection from various moneylenders, a stable home, and blackmail. Naruto rattled off, not even hesitating the slightest at the last option. Jiraiya's and Shizune's eyes widened, for different reasons. Shizune tried to think of just what did he have to blackmail her master, while Jiraiya knew exactly just what Naruto was talking about. He harshly whispered, "Naruto, what are you doing?" To his shock, Naruto gently waved him away. "Don't worry, Jiraiya-sensei, I know exactly what I am doing. I'll show her the reality of her situation." Tsunade almost hissed at Naruto. "What blackmail?" Naruto rested his chin on his hands. The fact that there is nothing stopping the old man from declaring you a S-rank missing nin, should we fail. That was a sledgehammer that no one was prepared for. Jiraiya had wide eyes at Naruto's proclamation. Sensei hadn't said anything like that when he briefed him, so he had to be bluffing. But looking at Naruto's face, he realized that Naruto was not kidding at all. He looked entirely serious. Just as he was about to stop him, a hand came up to stop him, silently telling him to stay out of this. Jiraiya was sure that Tsunade would bash Naruto out any moment, but then he looked at her face. Tsunade had gone pale from shock. She would have never thought that she could be labeled as a S-rank nin, never considered that possibility, but then again, the brat could be bluffing. Snapping from her shock, she whispered, half angrily and half in denial, "You're bluffing." Naruto shrugged. "You have severed all contact with the village, haven't done anything except drink and gamble in 10 years, which means no service to the village, abuse of your Saiyan traveling rights, and have no intention of coming back. Quite a lot of similarities to a missing nin, am I right?" Tsunade smirked. The old monkey would never do that to his student. Naruto looked up and thought, "I'm pretty sure that I can convince him." All of a sudden, he was yanked forward by Tsunade, whose hand was now fisted in his jacket. She hissed coldly, "You wouldn't." Naruto stared at the hand for a moment, and then stared at her. "Please let go of the collar," he said calmly. Perhaps he pushed her too far, he mused. Tsunade harshly shoved him back into his seat, settling back into her own. Naruto straightened out his collar. Truth is a bitter pill to swallow, isn't it? Tsunade's glare could have killed him 10 times over if she had the ability to do that. The atmosphere was tense around the table. Jiraiya was sitting on the edge of his seat, ready to protect Naruto the moment Tsunade lifted her fist, while Shizune looked ready to restrain Tsunade. Naruto posed his question one more time. "So, will you come back for the sake of your village?" Tsunade made no reply as she glared hatefully at Naruto for forcing her into this position. The brat may have been bluffing, but there was the possibility that he wasn't as well, and he had hit the hammer on the nail. He had compared her to a missing nin, and she would admit this to no one, but the similarities were strikingly accurate. If she accepted, then she would be going back to the village that caused her so much pain and loss. But if she didn't, she could be branded a high-level missing nin. Naruto sighed disappointingly. I see. He then, to the shock of everyone on the table, got up from his seat and brushed himself. Let's go, sensei. Jiraiya was still recovering from what just Naruto said, so he could only blink in response. What? Naruto didn't so much as look back. We are wasting our time here. Our village is better off without her. We certainly don't need some trash who is afraid of facing the difficulties and realities of life as a Shinobi, much less the Hokage. We would be the laughingstock of the entire elemental nations. Naruto knew he really was asking for it. He knew from the moment he started talking to Tsunade that Jiraiya's plan was doomed to fail from the beginning. No sort of sweet talking would ever work on her, so he tried a different way. Jiraiya might not approve using blackmail against his former teammate, who he still cared for deeply, but as long as she comes back to the village in one piece, perfectly fine and healthy, anything goes. So he came up with a backup plan. He knew that Tsunade was practically royalty, being directly related to the first two Hokages, and the student of the third. Gigi would hesitate to put his former student's name in the bingo book as an S-rank missing nin, but he would do it for the sake of the village. After all, the man had the balls to pull off a move such as dissolving the highly annoying civilian council, even in his age. Perhaps he should have given an incentive for Jiraiya to give to Tsunade to convince her to come back, but that's beside the point. He would have to exploit Tsunade's weakness for gambling, and the only way to do that was to bait her, and it seemed to have worked, for his danger sense rang 2 seconds before he felt a hand on his shoulder, forcibly turning him around, and a hand once again roughly grabbing his collar. Tsunade's enraged face greeted him, full of gritted teeth and a snarl. Naruto would have almost panicked if not for the initial success of his plan, for Tsunade was releasing quite a large amount of killing intent. He noticed out of the corner of his eye that all the people in the bar had fainted right away. Behind Tsunade, Shizune and Jiraiya had risen to their feet. Shizune was clutching the piglet to her stomach almost painfully. If the piglet's expression was anything to go by, he was surprised it hadn't fainted, though. Jiraiya could have broken bar. Panicky, for the lack of a better word. Naruto discreetly motioned him to stay. He had this under control. Jiraiya looked doubtful, but nodded hesitantly. Naruto finally turned his attention to the enraged blonde, and amusingly noted that they were almost the same height. Tsunade lifted her other fist threateningly. I'm this close to sending you back to your village, the expressway brat. Naruto's eyes narrowed, his expression turning stony. His hand came up to grip Tsunade's hand that was roughing up his collar. Let go. Of course, she didn't seem to hear him. Rather, she asked mockingly, or what? Now, it was clear that she was underestimating him. His grip tightened as Tsunade's eyes widened a bit. Or burn. Tsunade immediately let go of the collar as soon as her hand had started to feel warm. Clearly, the brat could control his chakra very well. A few seconds longer and her wrist would have been burned. Naruto smoothed his collar once more and asked, might I ask just what provoked such an action on your part? Tsunade damn near snarled at the audacity of the brat in front of her. You call me trash and simply expect to get away? No one is that lucky, brat. Naruto crossed his arms and made a disbelieving expression. Let me get this straight. You are going to attack me just because you don't like hearing that you are trash who abandoned their village. Oh, Naruto looked as if he had an epiphany. Sorry, my bad. You are not trash, a broken bar. You are actually worse than trash. Tsunade just about had it. She took a step forward but was quickly restrained by Jiraiya, who struggled to keep her from killing his foolish godson. Young brats like you should learn how to talk to someone who can make paste out of you if provoked. Naruto had no problem returning the insult. Oh, I know how to quite well. A pity that no one taught you. And what do you know about young people these days anyway? Jiraiya was frantically motioning Naruto to stop. The one thing that ticked Tsunade the most was whenever her age was mentioned in a mocking way. He didn't know why Naruto was doing this, but his student was treading in dangerous waters. Tsunade finally wrenched herself free from her teammate, but did not immediately move forward. She instead asked in a low, intimidating voice, "What's that supposed to mean?" Naruto stood in his spot, not intimidated at all. "What do you think, Bachan?" Tsunade and he were nose to nose again. Tsunade's smoldering rage was matched against the freezing gaze of his own. "You punk, I really ought to teach you a lesson," Shizune pleaded with Tsunade. "Tsunade-sama, you don't have to go that far, let's just go." She was silenced when Tsunade harshly glared at her, forcing her to remain silent. Naruto sighed, as if it pained him to say this. "If you really want to fight, perhaps we should head outside? I would rather avoid collateral damage more than what you have already done," he said, sweeping a hand around the bar to show the unconscious people. Tsunade glared and said nothing as she almost stomped outside. Shizune hurried behind her master, looking at Naruto as if he were mad. She wouldn't be wrong, as Naruto had no problem in admitting he was crazy. Jiraiya walked over to Naruto, a stern look on her face. "Why are you doing this, Naruto? Why antagonize her so much?" Naruto took a deep breath. "She can't be Hokage when she is like this, Sensei. Not when she is clinging on to the past without any intention of letting it go. A Hokage cannot afford to be weak-minded like this. I am trying to break her out of this state of self-pity she has put herself in." Jiraiya snorted. "Let me tell you then, you are doing a piss-poor job of it," Naruto sarcastically replied. "I wonder why we weren't going by your method." "Oh, that's right, it was failing." The retort was quick. "And yours isn't." Naruto put his hand on the door handle. "We'll see." With that, he stepped outside. Tsunade eyed the brat in front of her with narrowed eyes. While he was maybe a bit good, she doubted he was anywhere near her level. She was a Sannin, while the brat before her was merely a Genin, Chunin level at best. There was a whole world of difference between them. "Kid, I'll give you one last chance to apologize for what you said to me." His reaction surprised her greatly. His expression immediately became frosty, his eyes narrowing into flinty chips of ice that was cold it burned. The look reminded her of Nimike's Minato, whose enemies ran in the opposite direction on seeing that look. "Apologize? To you? Perhaps it should be the other way around, for you knowingly insulted a man who sacrificed his own family for the sake of the village he loved, in front of his son no less." Dead silence filled the alleyway, and Naruto was glad that the street was completely deserted. Tsunade's eyes widened, and a pinch of guilt filled her being, before she shoved it aside. Before she could say anything else, Naruto continued. He was quite fed up of her by now. "You have no idea just what the Yondaime gave his life for, and frankly, I don't think you will ever understand. You have no idea how hard the old man works each day to keep the village safe and sound. You have no idea how much he helped each person in it, indiscriminately. Your worst day can't even hold a candle to his, and you think you can turn down the position because you have some personal issues? You have no idea what the Hokage stands for, yet your sensei believes you do, and here you are, betraying the trust he placed in you. All you can do is run away like a coward." Tsunade was trembling with rage at his point. She was tempted to just thrash him to Kingdom Come, but she needed to show this brat why no one messed with her. She growled out, "Looks like our way too excited to go into a coma. Gaki." She swallowed her anger and listed out the rules. Physical attacks only. First one floored wins. Jiraiya and Shizune cringed at the implications of the rules while Naruto shrugged. She was about to lose anyway. Why not give her a handicap? Tsunade smirked savagely and lifted her index finger. "One finger. That is all I'll be using." Naruto nodded and said, "Very well, since you have laid down the rules of the fight, it only seems fair that I lay down the stakes. I win. You come back with us to the village. You win. We leave you alone. I'll even give you my wallet." He held up his wallet, which jingled with coins and sounds of crispy notes. No need to mention he kept the least amount of his money in his wallet. Tsunade cocked an eyebrow. "All right, I'll make this even more interesting. If you win, I'll give you this necklace." She pulled at the necklace that was dangling in front of her impressive bust, showing him the crystal that swung on the end. Naruto raised an eyebrow in return, but nodded. "All right then, sensei, please give the signal." Jiraiya was shocked that Tsunade was willing to wager that necklace to Naruto, but then his shock turned to pity. He knew just what was going to happen, but he felt that perhaps Naruto should learn a bit of humility. He was getting way too overconfident. He sliced the air in front of him. "Hajime, He was confused when Naruto just took out a kunai from his thigh holster and ran towards her. A disbelieving expression came over the faces of both Shizune and Jiraiya. Jiraiya was just gaping at the fact that Naruto wasn't even going at Chunin level speeds, and charging Tsunade head-on. He knew Naruto planned his every fight out from the beginning and was capable of some really impressive improvisation, but honestly speaking, this one looked to be a bit foolish. Either the brat had a really good plan, or he was just acting plain stupid. Tsunade had a triumphant and smug expression on her face as she watched Naruto apparently sprint towards her with a kunai. He was attacking her head-on, seemingly without any strategy. Perhaps the son of the Yondaime failed to inherit the brains of his father. She smirked as he came within striking distance. All bark and no bite, that's all he is. Naruto swiped at her with the kunai, but she didn't even need to be sober for this. Even swaying her head to the side as if dancing to a tune, she easily avoided the kunai, knocking aside the arm like a mere fly and flicked her finger. Right in the center of his forehead, his head was thrown back in a jerk, his body soon following as it flew through the air, crashing painfully on the ground and tumbling on. However, instead of the gleam of defeat, shock and confusion swam in her eyes as she fully saw the scene in front of her. Jiraiya and Shizune weren't doing much better either, all had the same thought going over in their heads. When did he do that? Naruto glared at his opponent as he took her in,